Welcome back to the Cross Border Interviews live special recap of the biggest political news stories here in Canada, and that is the Conservative Party leadership results happening in Ottawa as we speak. The announcement came down after one round of voting. Pierre Poilievre is now the newest leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and he won with 68.15% of the vote. Coming in second is former Liberal Premier of Quebec, Jean Charest. Coming in third, 2020 leadership candidate Leslyn Lewis with 9%. Roman Babar, the former MPP from Ontario, with 5%. And Scott Atkinson, I pronounced his name wrong all the time, I apologize, with 1%. And joining us for the next hour to discuss what went on and how we got to where we are today are all returning guests to the show, and I'm going to do them in order as you see them. And I'm going to get this wrong because I'm going to go screen right, stage right. But on top of the board is former guest of the show, Jeff Watson. Underneath Jeff is Sarah, and Rob Ward is back with us. Jeff, Sarah, Rob, thank you so much for doing this. This is an honor to have you back on the show to discuss this.
Hi.
So I'm going to throw it over to Jeff first because you've served in caucus with the newest leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre. What are your initial thoughts of what happened tonight and what happened and what's going to be going forward?
Well, obviously a strong result. I think it demonstrates that Conservatives are unified for the important tasks that are ahead of us. The first being defeating Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government, and secondly, replacing it with a Conservative government that will put Canadians back in control of their lives and make Canada the freest country on earth. I think we're excited about that. We needed a strong result, I think, too. I think Pierre personally, being the front runner in this campaign, couldn't have had anything weaker. As a result, so this is a good step forward for us. I think it will galvanize the grassroots. It will energize the volunteers, and I think you'll see a plan coming or an action plan coming out of Pierre very quickly out of the gates, both to establish who he is and not let the Liberals do that for him, while keeping the Liberals on the defensive.
You served with Pierre during your time in office, Jeff, and I apologize to keep coming back to you for a few seconds, but you know the man. Okay. You know the man. You know the guy who's the new leader. Take us through the persona that we don't see on the campaign trail, because we see the YouTube videos, we see the tweets, but you know him from the work that you've done with him as well, whether it be in caucus or at the at the committee tables as well.
Yeah, well, we were both elected in the class of 2004. He stayed around a little longer than I did, obviously, and was very successful at it. Past cabinet member. I mean, we could go through the resume, but Pierre, the person, has really grown up throughout his career. I remember he was probably only about 24 or 25 years old when he was first elected in 2004. He's now husband, father. Those add maturity to your perspective. They broaden your view. They give you more patience, I think, and temperament. Pierre, the private person, I think, you may not get to see enough of him because Pierre, the politician, has his guard up a lot more. But I think he's a principled person, and I think you're going to see strong, principled leadership on a go-forward basis from him. He's aggressive and a fighter. I don't think he's going to retreat from an electoral fight over conservative values like some other leaders might do or might have done in the past. So I think you'll see him prosecute an aggressive fight going forward, and that I think will energize the troops. That's what you need in an election, is to have your ground troops ready for something like this. And from there, we'll look to see what his message, how it develops over time. I think the olive branches tonight were very important to recognize the value of the other leadership contenders. That was an important first step. for him. You'll begin to hear a little bit more about what Pierre, I think, will do in his leadership and how he'll put his stamp on the Conservative Party. And then, of course, there will be an important platform process to develop for the next election. So those are all some big things to be looking for down the road.
Sarah, I'm going to throw this one over to you. The new leader, Pierre Poilievre, is a known name in Canadian politics. It's not an Aaron O'Toole where some people might have heard him but may not have heard him. It's not an Andrew Scheer because not a lot of people know who the Speaker of the House of Commons is, but this is a known name. Does this give the Conservatives a leg up moving into the fall session where they don't have to introduce their new leader to Canadians where they had to with Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer, and it gives the Conservatives a proper footing to basically start, as Jeff said, going after Justin Trudeau with economic issues and not saying this is who we are?
Yeah. So even back when I was over there in 2005, 2006, everybody who Pierre was already. He would walk into a place and we all know it's Poilievre's and UMP. Everybody knew who he was already. I think name recognition is 50% of the battle, and he already has won that. I thought so. There's always, so we always need to look at so it's one thing to elect a leader, but is said leader able to get elected into a national election, to a federal election? Those are very, very two important issues. So I was one of them. I was like, well, maybe he's not going to be electable, 905 or Ontario's general, Quebec and the Maritimes, but he came out very, very strong in Quebec. And I'm from Quebec, and I'm surprised. I'm really surprised to see the results tonight. But I think that the name recognition is already there. He's been fighting for his ideas. He's been extremely vocal. He's an extremely good orator as well. He delivers. Like, I was watching his speech and I was like, whoa. Everybody's taking notes, right? Because affordability is the number one issue right now in the country. But name recognition's half the battle. He's already there. What's interesting is that he has a French name, so I think that it is going to play in the balance as well. Because very often when people are looking at the balance, they don't look for the party, they look for the name that they recognize. If they don't recognize the name, then they go to the party. So it's going to be very interesting to see how strong he's going to be coming, but he's going to have to recent. So we're all saying that us conservatives is a big tent. Some are like me, more like small C conservatives. Some are more on the right of the conservative spectrum. So we will have to see how well Mr. Poilievre will be able to bring everybody together. Because if we remember, when the vaccine came out, when it was vaccine procurement time, Mr. Poilievre was extremely vocal about when are we getting the vaccine? When are we getting the vaccine? And we're like, close our borders. So he's going to have to retighten his message to be able to gather everybody around him and then be extremely strong for the next election. But do I discount a win? No. I just wish he had a little bit more of a platform. That's what I'm going to
talk about platform, because there were some major topics that he spoke about throughout the speech that he gave tonight. But I want to throw this one over to Rob, and then I'm going to get everyone else to comment on this. At the onset of this campaign, there was a lot of talk about the soul of the Conservative Party. Is it going to be the old PCs winning? Is it going to be the old Reform Canadian Alliance winning? But with a 68% mandate, with a 68.15% mandate, that question is now off the table, because there are more. I'm assuming it's a 50-50 split. There may be a little bit less PCs. It might be like 40-60%. But with 68% of the vote, like, Pierre Poilievre can go to the general public and say, I've won over former reformers, I've won over former PCers, and this is no longer the two-party system. We are the Conservative United Party that is going to defeat Justin Trudeau. Right, Rob?
Right. And I think, for the party's benefit, the number being what it was is huge for the party as a whole, because, had this been a close race, had, two candidates been quite close, then that can sort of fracture the party. It can bring about uncertainty for voters. And I think with Pierre getting such a huge number, I mean, that just it's perfect for the Conservative Party. I mean, if we look at, I did show prep for once. I don't usually do this, but if you look in Quebec and
Rob.
if you look in Quebec, okay, I have the numbers here. So there's 78, seats in Quebec, and there's 53 in the GTA. So that's 131 seats. And right now the Conservative Party only has 14 of them. So if they want to have a hope of winning this election, they have to do a heck of a lot better in the GTA and in Quebec. And, with the number that Pierre, attained tonight, I think that's a really good first step, because I think he's going to be able to walk into the GTA and into Quebec and say, I didn't just get by the skin of my teeth here. This is a strong mandate. There's belief in him. And I think it's going to make his life easier, because at the end of the day, this isn't about a leadership race. This is about winning a federal election. And I think they're on the right path with Pierre so far here.
Anyone else wants to jump in on that? I want to pose that question to everyone. Jeff, if you want to jump in, let's go.
Sure. Look, 68% plus of the vote. Let's put this in perspective. First of all, outside the party, Pierre Poilievre, as leader, will be able to say, look, I not only had that as a mandate from members, but that's the largest party electoral mandate in Canadian history. I think we're talking some 400 plus thousand votes in this leadership race. So that is, he'll be able to project strength and unity outside the party. Internally, make no mistake, this will give him considerable latitude to put his stamp on where the party is at and where it is going. If you would have asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said Pierre was probably more the extension of a Harper era, if you will. I don't know that will be entirely true. I think largely that will still be true, but Pierre will be able to put his own stamp on what this party is going forward. It's Pierre's party. Secondly, internally with respect to the party caucus, I think this will end the infighting. It will say to those who may, if there are any who have any lingering doubt or grudge coming out of this, that you're really the outlier in caucus as well. It's time to pull ranks and let's just get the job done. So I think you'll see an end to the infighting. So this result, I think, is good, both projecting externally by the leader and internally in terms of how he'll manage caucus, and put his stamp on things going forward.
I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate guy here for 10 seconds, but I'm going to always say this. Isn't that what all conservatives say after a leadership race, or all parties say after a leadership race? There's going to be caucus unity. They said that after Aaron O'Toole. They said that after Aaron Duchesne. They said that after Michael Ignatieff, and we all saw how well that went over. We all said that about Stéphane Dion, and wah, wah, wah. So is it actually something different this time, Jeff?
Well, for sure. Look, this is not Andrew Scheer defeating Max Bernier by a sliver, and people sort of maintaining a veneer on the top while underneath that they're still quarreling. That thing broke out. Obviously, Bernier left. This is not that. This is a commanding win where the overwhelming majority of caucus had declared support for the leader. I think this is the moment where and having been in a caucus, you're going to look at this and go, yeah, the leader's got lots of latitude. It's probably best to, even if you may not support the leader still, it's probably best just to stay quiet and do your business, put your head down and get some things done. So this will quell anything that may have been brewing during the leadership race itself.
The caucus unity is one thing that it seems like this party is going to be able to get under wraps really quickly with this result. There have been reports, and we all believe what Twitter says, because Twitter's the end-all be-all of what everything is going on. John Charest has said he would not run under a leadership of Pierre Poilievre because he just doesn't believe it. Does do the 10 MPs that endorse him say, okay, John, if you're leaving, don't let the door hit you on the way out, Sarah? Or are the 10 MPs going, well, John, let's go start a new party because our feelings are hurt?
My crystal ball's so broken right now. I don't even know what to think. I've been a very vocal about a possible fracture of, going back to some kind of reform / old blue, old stock conservative, more Eastern style politics. But if, like I said before, if what you have times up is messaging, if he listens to everyone, if he stay reasonable, he's going to be able to keep the caucus together if he listens to everyone. And, Alberta is the perfect example. Why are we here today? Why are we running leadership campaigns today?
But isn't that why we're running the leadership of the Conservative Party? Because didn't Aaron O'Toole run as the true blue Conservative and then flip? Like, it seems to me, and it could be wrong here, sorry, and I'm just going to finish my statement. Like, Pierre Poilievre is Pierre Poilievre. You love him or hate him. There's no, gray line with Pierre, right? Like, there is no gray line with that man. So I don't see him flipping. Do you, Sarah?
I think he's going to soften up. I think he's going to soften up his messaging, because I don't think that we'll see. I hope he's going to soften up.
We'll go to Rob, then we'll go to
Jeff. Rob.
Rob, do you think he's going to soften after Sarah's done? We'll let you speak here in 2 seconds, Rob.
I hope he's going to soften up because he's going to have to look at elective. So here's the thing. He won this leadership. How many membership has he sold in the West? So we need to keep in mind that BC, Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan have a very certain limited amount of seats. But is he popular enough past Ontario to be able to win those seats? Because if we're looking right now, the province that has been through curfews, severe actual lockdown measures, vaccine passports from day one, and all of that, are re-electing their government right now with a very crushing majority in Quebec. So we will have to see, because they are showing that, okay, it's over now, but we were okay with the actions, because everybody was vilifying CAQ 8-9 a year ago. But now they're like, no, you know what? You did a good job. It's over. Let's move on. We're going to give you another crushing majority. So that's what I'm saying. I really hope, for the sake of the party, that he softens his message for anything past Manitoba, because I have concerns if he keeps going.
Rob, I'll let you jump in here, and then we'll jump over to Jeff, because I see the amount of energy they're trying to hold back right now to try to be respectful. I'll be the host, and I'll just jump in and randomly interrupt people as we go. Rob, what do you have to say to that?
Well, I think, Pierre, how he sort of gained energy and momentum in this whole race was, he had a pretty firm stance against COVID things that were going on. And at the time, I think it was the right move, because they needed a loud voice. But I think what was interesting is, if you paid attention to his speech tonight, it was a lot deeper than his message has been throughout his whole campaign. I was actually really surprised with the detail he went into about the economy, especially about housing. I thought that was really powerful stuff. I remember there was one line he said he wants to build affordable housing by transit stations so that, the people don't have to even purchase a vehicle. Like, it was pretty deep messaging from him that kind of went away from how he ran his campaign. I was like, okay, this is now leadership messaging. This is different. And I think he was on the right path with that.
Jeff, what do you have to say?
Look, the soft side of Pierre was already on display in the leadership campaign, not with the political actors, but with Canadians who were suffering, right? And that came out in his video after video. The crowds who came out to hear him were looking for a message of hope. Pierre, the listener, has been hearing that and has tangible solutions for that. So I don't want us to think somehow we haven't heard a softer side of Pierre. Pierre inside the political arena, battling the political actors, Justin Trudeau, whatever, that will continue to be sharp. Pierre's a battler, he's a fighter, and he's going to fight for Canadians. I think that's what we're going to see. The other thing I would say, remember, look, Stephen Harper was not warm and fuzzy, but he was one of the most successful conservative prime ministers. What was his strength? He understood what the issues were. He knew how to prioritize, and he knew how to connect on things that people cared about and would actually vote on. So I think our success in places like the GTA, the Greater Vancouver area, for example, will rest on the types of issues you're hearing from Pierre. What are we going to do? Housing is no longer attainable for many people. How do we reverse that? What are you going to do about cost of living? What are you going to do to contain the overspending of government that contributes to runaway inflation? So I think on issues, people are smart enough when they get into a ballot box in an election, they're paying attention to where their pocketbook is at and who's going to answer the question for them. So I think you're going to see a platform from Pierre and an outreach from Pierre from now through the next election that will focus on really sharpening that listening to people who are hurting and proposing meaningful solutions. That will be the recipe, I think, in the end for electoral success.
But I just have something to add. Would it be a little out of the box or insane, if you want to say, that if he keeps going with that messaging, we need to take care of, well, the conservative principles, right? We take care of our elders, we take care of our vulnerable, we take care of people, that does need help, because we need to go back to very basic conservative principles. Do we think that maybe he's going to lose somewhat that base that got in there, talking about freedom and anti-vaxxer? I'm just wondering, because maybe if he's softening or if he's talking about those issues too much, maybe he's going to lose and he's going to stop talking about, the big sound bites like no mandatory vaccinations, or let's reopen our borders and no more arrive-can, or let's fire the governor of the Bank of Canada, or defund the CBC, those very, very catchy soundbite WEF, the whole conversation surrounding that. If he's walking away from those talking points, could it possibly be losing some of the base that got in here today? As a political scientist, I'm thinking that maybe some of it's going to be staring off from him if he softens up too much.
My one statement on that is, I think Maxime Bernier is about to wake up tomorrow morning with a tougher job than he probably expected if it was either John Charest or someone else at this top of the ticket. Maxime Bernier's and the People's Party of Canada is probably in for a rude awakening in the next election, because with Aaron O'Toole, you had a 905 Canadian who really didn't connect with the West, and the PPC was able to come in there and jump in that. I want to ask a sort of a really in-depth question, but it's going to sound like I'm being insincere to both leaders here. But are we now in the state of cult politics? We have Justin Trudeau, of the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, who some say will be the leader until either he is defeated or he decides to leave. He is their greatest and their worst asset for Canadians. We now have Pierre Poilievre, who is well known, who is kind of a celebrity in politics, like Justin Trudeau was in 2015, and there is a quote unquote cult around him of he is going to bring us back to the promised land of government. He is going to bring us back. He's going to defeat the gatekeepers. Is Canada moving towards the cult of politics, and you get one good leader and you can galvanize around them? Because like you said, Jeff, in 2004, when Stephen Harper, he wasn't all that well known. People knew of him, but it wasn't like he was well known. No one really knew Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole. No one knew who the heck Michael Ignatieff was, because the Conservatives were able to brand him so well. And then Justin Trudeau came along, and you can't brand the guy because he's Teflon. Pierre Poilievre is the equivalent, and I say this with respect to both men, Pierre Poilievre is the equivalent to Justin Trudeau when it comes to politics, isn't he? Who wants to take that? Rob, go.
I don't. Okay.
I'll be quick. I mean, I think for the first time in a very long time, it's almost like it's not a party versus party election that we're going into. I think it's almost framed as man versus man, or, you know, candidate versus candidate. I think this is really a lot of the, you know, we're all very politically minded people and we're plugged into it really well. But, you know, I talk to friends about this leadership race, and, you know, they don't know as much as we do. They just know the guy, right? And so now it's Pierre Poilievre, and people know who he is. So it's almost going to be, you know, I think of it as like a WrestleMania card here. It's going to be Justin Trudeau versus Pierre Poilievre for the title. I mean, that's the way I see it. And I don't know if we've had that for a long time. You look back at, you know, Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer, and it's like, yeah, people kind of knew who they were, but they weren't really like huge fans. Whereas now I think you've got a legit candidate with a strong following, and, you know, he's branded himself really well. So yeah, I think going forward, it's Pierre versus Justin for the first time in a long time.
Jeff, what about yourself? Do you think?
Yeah, didn't Pierre at one time actually have a website, fighterforyou.ca or something like that?
I think so.
It's been his brand, to Rob's point. But let me say a couple things. One, to the broader question of the Americanization of our politics, which is really the cult of leader you're referring to, Chris. I've been concerned about that growing trend that media love to talk about leaders. Even the public, to some degree, are looking for, you know, a strong leader. Leadership is important. It's not, you know, but American politics is not conducive to our institutions and traditions in Canada. So in Parliament, you know, our Prime Minister on one hand is, you know, by unwritten part of the Constitution is the Crown, but he's also just the leader of a government that has to be responsible and accountable to a Parliament, and we elect parliaments, not leaders. So, you know, caucus has some degree of problem typically with that too, and that they treat their leaders more like kings and than they do about leaders who are accountable to them. So I am concerned about the general trend. I think there's some corrosion there. But look, I think Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau are two very different people. I think Justin Trudeau likes the cult of leader, and I would say that Pierre Poilievre is sort of the anti-hero. In some respects, the way Stephen Harper was. Look, there are people who needed somebody to champion the cause, go in there and fight like a dirty shirt for you, but didn't really want the spotlight. And so I think Pierre's sort of the anti-hero, who's going to do a tough job, and he's going to have to do the fight on behalf of a lot of people. But I think he'll stay focused on who he's doing it. But I think Trudeau, you know, I think he loves this thing, and you know, the more adulation, and maybe why he want to stick around a little bit longer too, right? He, you know, has trouble saying goodbye and loves the cult of personality, but.
Sarah, on that question, we are now with two very big, I don't want to say egos, but personalities at the top of the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. This spells trouble for the other parties on the down ballot, like the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, because we're seeing provincially they're about to go to a massive defeat with the Parti Québécois. The Green Party is... well, the Green Party and the NDP, and I mean respect to all these parties, but the NDP, I haven't seen any of them talking about the issues of the day. When you have two big personalities like this is going to be a two-party election, is it not? Where people are going to say you're either against Trudeau or you're against Pierre, or you're for Trudeau or you're for Pierre. It's not going to be we need a strategic vote this time. It's one or the other, I think, isn't it?
I was going to say, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen to the NDP, to the Greens, and to the Bloc now that we have those very two strong I don't like to call it characters, but it's like those two big personas that are, it's not a matter of party anymore. And like you said, Chris, it's Pierre versus Justin, and it's blue versus red. And I feel like there won't be any orange, there won't be any green, there won't be any light blue or any purple for that matter. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how both parties will be carrying their messages, because what's going to happen is that, let's say that 8, 9, 10, or 12% that the NDP could potentially go get, the Liberal, if they're tweaking their messaging correctly, they're going to be able to go and get that, maybe grind some points from the NDP. And then if we look at the Conservatives, well, that 4%, that 5% that they could get from the PPC, they're going to go and get it now, because Bernie is just walking around yelling at the clouds and not doing much, right? So it's going to be, and people won't see a real future with the PPC. So it's going to be interesting to see how Pierre and Justin are adjusting their messaging, because one of the battlegrounds is going to be Quebec, because the Bloc Québécois is still alive after, when is it, 31 years now? Give or take 31 years. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen next, but it's all about messaging, and it's all about how you frame your messaging. You could be talking about the worst thing, but with an extremely strong language, you could get elected tomorrow. So we're going to see how they're conveying everything. But it's going to be a battle of charisma. It's going to be a battle of messaging, and it's going to be a ground game this time. It's not going to be, about ads. It's all going to be about organization and how you work your writings and how you can go and, get the data on the ground and door knock, and get your own data and make sure you can win this. And their GoTV is going to be everything, because we're potentially looking at an election in the next 12 months. And Trudeau is staying on now. So,
do we expect an election now? Because we now have those two big personalities. We have the supply agreement, or however you want to call it, coalition between the NDP and the Liberals. Do the Liberals and the NDP have to say, okay, do we pull the trigger and hope for the best, or let's ride this out for the next 2 years and try to brand Pierre as a right-wing unknown who can't be trusted with the keys to the Bank of Canada because he might destroy it, even though, well, womp womp.
Well, the NDP Liberal marriage is a marriage of convenience. I wouldn't, they tried to get something they wanted to get themselves sometimes, because they were grown. They could not go back into an election in 8 months to save their lives. So we're going to see what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting.
Jeff, do you have?
Well, I would say that I would say right now that with the election of Pierre Poilievre as the Conservative leader, that Justin Trudeau doesn't need Jagmeet Singh anymore. For some of the dynamic you've talked about, I think Justin Trudeau's success, if you will, and his failure in terms of minority governments, success in terms of majority governments, have come around his ability to unite progressives. He'll be that will have to be the same. It'll be some variation of the same theme in an election coming up. Pierre will have to somehow unite sort of the center right, if you will, in that dynamic. The greater degree that Justin Trudeau is progressive, the more room he leaves in the center. So I think with two personalities taking a lot of the oxygen out of the room, he doesn't need Jagmeet Singh anymore, Justin Trudeau. Second, I would say I think the timetable for an election moves up considerably. Justin Trudeau already signaling in advance that he wants to stay on. Two, he's a better campaigner than a governor, if you will, and he relishes the campaign. And why not? He wants to dust up Pierre Poilievre and show people he wasn't just a Harper defeater, right? So I think he's relishing the fight. I think they're looking forward to trying to paint Pierre Poilievre as the worse and more evil than Stephen Harper ever could have been on his worst day. And what better way to focus the public attention than to do so in an election campaign? So I think the timetable's up. Here's what I'd be looking for in that regard. How fast do they come out, and how hard do they come out, the Liberals, that is, in their messaging and advertising against Pierre Poilievre. How fast do they move up the timetable for their own election readiness? And third, whether or not Pierre Poilievre reopens nominations for a clean slate of candidates, or at least an opportunity to get a clean slate of candidates, or whether he keeps them closed and presses ahead to finish them. Those are the early markers I'd be looking for on the ground.
But before they get there, before we even start talking about the election, Pierre Poilievre's first job now is to sit down with his caucus and appoint shadow ministers. That will be his big thing. Who is going to be on his front bench? And while we can speculate till the cows come home, I'm going to pose this question to you, and I know I'm putting you all on the spot here. Is there anyone in the caucus right now that you're looking as a potential deputy leader to be Pierre's Candice Bergen for Aaron O'Toole, for Lisa Raitt to Andrew Scheer? Is there a deputy leader that you could be seeing that is going to come out of the woodworks and sort of be the softer version, as you might say, to the leader of Pierre Poilievre? Who wants to take that question first? Anyone?
Jeff does.
Jeff knows them, so he'll answer it.
I don't. No. Look, Jeff doesn't know everything. Don't worry about that. But look, if I'm looking for Pierre, I think I think I would sort of reject your characterization of Candice Bergen. She wasn't sort of a soft leader. Anybody who knows Candice knows that she's tough and credible and common sense, a little bit hard nosed. She has tact and diplomacy to balance that out, but by no means is she sort of soft, if you will. Well, I'm setting this up for one. It's not to pick on you, Chris. Don't worry about that. But I'm setting this up because I think one of the people who could emerge, and I don't know if anybody else has her on the bingo card, but I'd watch for Stephanie Cousy out of Calgary. Western, female, known to be common sense, multilingual, fluently bilingual. I think diplomat is a background. So if you're looking for somebody who can be sort of hard-nosed but have diplomacy to round out the skill set in a way that Candice sort of embodied, I'd be looking for her. I don't know that I've thought a little bit further about whether there's somebody in Ontario who could fill the bill. I'd have to think a little bit harder. But she emerges to me in a very small group of people who have a skill set and a balance to a lot of things that could really work in that kind of an equation. Or you could have Pierre decide he doesn't need a deputy leader and balance out. Stephen Harper didn't really have a deputy leader. That's correct.
He didn't have a deputy prime minister or a deputy leader at the time when he was in opposition, right? No. He did it. Nope. So, okay. It wasn't until Andrew Scheer came on the scene, right? Or Rona Ambrose. I think she introduced a deputy. Anyway.
You're going to make me think now, Chris.
Come on. It's only 7:30 at night. What are you talking about? We all should be thinking right now. We are in a new era of conservative politics, and I think everyone can agree to that, because Pierre is a unique entity when it comes to conservative politics, but politics in general. He does not do the traditional media. He does social media. He does his own thing. He beats to his own drum. Rob, to try to even peg down what the next year is going to be like under Pierre Poilievre is going to be hard, because yes, he'll have to do the traditional things, House of Commons, where he does traditionally well, but he is a one-man marching band. I can tell you, when we post stuff on YouTube with Pierre Poilievre, it blows up because people want to see him. We can't predict what the next year is going to be like for the Conservative Party, can we?
No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this now, because, kind of like what we said earlier, you have to have a strong message, but you also have to be very careful that you don't give ammunition for the other side. And I think I worry about what the Liberal Party will do with some of the things he's said in the past or things he's done in the past. But I think he's an intelligent guy. I think he'll, keep things pretty squeaky clean here. And sorry, firing back to your last question there, I thank God Jeff said Stephanie Cousy, because that's the first one that popped in my head as well. So I feel somewhat intelligent.
Get
And
all your
the other one I thought
all
of,
your answers on that. I apologize, guys. I
yeah.
was like,
And then
just
the
so
other
we
one
get-
I actually like, the other one that immediately came into my head was Melissa Landsman. I think I could see that.
416 Thornhill Riding,
Yep.
Jewish.
They
Lesbian.
don't need someone else in Calgary. They don't need someone from Calgary.
Yeah,
Pierce,
he's got it locked up here.
he's locked up here.
Yeah.
He needs someone from back. He's like, you could go with Gerard Deltel, or you could go with someone from the
Does he
Quebec
appoint
caucus if you would like.
John Charest supporter as an olive branch. Jeff is saying no to that right off the bat.
No, look, Stockwell Day kept too many of Preston Manning's people around, and that didn't work out very well for
Yeah,
him. So.
it's so he's gonna have to be working with the other side of the. So I would say this. There's a lot. So he's gonna have to name someone that's gonna be able to assist him. We could even go with Mr. Chong. Somebody is more moderate. Because on the spectrum, Stephanie Cussy is really good. She has a lot of tact, but she would be seen more on the right of the right spectrum, if you want. You got your left, you got your right, you got your little sliding scale. I would go that she's probably more in the right, on a lot of issues. So if I was Mr. Poilievre to try to, calm the waters where it's a little bit more liberal in the 905 in Ontario and in Quebec, I would try to go with someone a little bit more less social conservative, if you want, to try to calm the waters on that side of the country. We don't need anyone from Calgary to assert his position, back him up in caucus. But
I
what
was
I
thinking like
would like to
someone
say,
of
Michael
Dan
Chong.
Ellis from BC, finance critic right now. He's well liked in BC, I'm assuming. I follow the guy on social media. He seems to be savvy on the social media, and you kind of need the yin to the yang for Pierre, right? You need someone who's also social media savvy. So,
well, if you're going to go to BC, you might look at Carrie Lynn Findlay down in the Greater Vancouver area. She's been in cabinet before in the Harper years. I don't know how good her French is, mind you, but she may have some passable French. You'll have to forgive me. I haven't watched her enough in the House in her current iteration, but always a possibility. I think you'd want to. I think you would want to counterbalance strong male leadership with strong female leadership, I think.
I want to turn to one last subject because I know we're running out of time here because it's almost at the hour mark, and I just want to make sure it does not seem like it's been an hour, but it's been a great conversation so far. And I want to talk about the topics of his speech tonight. First off, his wife, Anna, gave an amazing speech. I think a lot of people can say that was knocked out of the park. I think you're going to see Sophie Trudeau on the campaign trail a lot more with this whole iteration of the Conservative Party, because I think when you have what you saw of a loving couple on that stage, you want to portray that as well, to say, hey, we're the family values party as well. But in his speech tonight, he talked about energy, inflation a lot, trade, the war in Ukraine, agriculture, Arrive Canada, mandates, healthcare, safe streets. He hit on a subject that almost every Canadian can feel like they're being addressed to, even if it's just one small line. These are issues that are the bread and butter of politics. Which one to you guys tonight? And I know we weren't able to listen to the whole thing because we got on here quickly, but which one do you think speaks to the larger portion of this country right now? And which one spoke to you to say he's in the right space to actually start a good campaign against Justin Trudeau to be the next Prime Minister? Rob?
I think the one that's going to resonate with the most amount of people, I think, is inflation. I mean, if you look at polls recently, inflation is a large sort of issue for most Canadians. And I think the way that he talked about it is what was really powerful. I mean, he could have gone into great detail and, brought up rates and all this stuff that nobody would understand and nobody would really care about. But he really simplified the message and made it quite personable. And I give him a lot of credit for that because, I mean, I can tell you from experience that when you get too into the weeds about a certain topic, people just kind of shut off and they don't really care anymore. So to keep the message strong and simple and to the point, I think that was his best talking point in his speech, and it will benefit him the most. And and I'll give him credit. I was kind of mocking what I thought his victory speech would be like tonight, and I thought it was going to be really loud and really get the crowd riled up. And I'll give the man a heck of a lot of credit. That was extremely well done. Very strong messages. And yeah, I think he did connect with a lot of people. I think that video will be seen by many and it's going to really personally connect with them. So full props to him. That was really well done.
Sarah, what about yourself? What did you find that spoke to you the most in this speech? I can tell you right now, as someone who has gone on the airlines a few times over the last few months, Arrive Can, that spoke to me. What about yourself?
So, well, right now, I'm running a conservative campaign myself in Alberta, and when we talk to people, it's affordability, it's housing, it's why are my taxes not reindexed? Why did it take so long? Why is AISH not increased? And and I believe that we're at a turning point now where we're gonna, and that's my approach to everything that I've been doing and everything that I've been writing these days, is that we need to stop making it a left or a right issue. We need to start doing what's right. And I think that we need to keep that in mind. Increasing AISH is not an NDP talking point. Increasing AISH is tackling down affordability, and it's giving people, the same, I would say not the same purchasing power, but dignity, because we need to go back again, on our conservative principles and taking care of our elders and our vulnerable and all that. And, what resonated with me today was the speech on housing. He's got a better speech on housing than Trudeau has right now. And it really talked to me, because every day on the campaign trail, we see it. People, I had seniors, incredible people wanting to buy a membership and trying to find $10 because they really want to be part of this, because they want to have their say. So I think that we need to stop taking an approach of, well, that's an NDP talking point, or you're a liberal plant, or you're this or you're that. No, we need a leader that's going to start standing up and starting to do what's right. I'm tired. Everybody's being used as a political football for left or right. I think we need to take, especially with the new cultish approach, I think we need to be, a little bit more on our guards and really listen to what the people want and, act on it. I wouldn't see myself doing anything otherwise. Now, 25 years ago, I would have been like, go Pierre, probably. But now it's more, let's sit down, let's do the right thing. Let's not do what it's going to, get me the popularity contest, because at the end of the day, you're still leading a whole country. So,
Jeff, you and I spoke a while back on the show, and we talked about the rural-urban divide on conservative politics, particularly about connecting with urban and rural, and the divide that we saw in the last election. These points that he talked about, healthcare, housing, inflation, these just don't speak to people in downtown Toronto, but they speak to people in your old riding, people here in Calgary Skyview, people out in the foothills. These are issues that speak to everyone. Is this the way forward to win the next government?
Well, if you asked sort of the three issues I think that would resonate. I think if you're looking strategically at the suburbs, it will be about housing affordability or attainability. It will be about inflation and the damage to your purchasing power, how to rein that in. But I think bringing a bit of the question you just posited it to me, you've sort of suggested about whether these speak to the rural. Let me take the other two issues you sort of mentioned about crime, which I think suburbs will be concerned about too, and the food supply issue, fertilizer regulations potentially coming in, what's happening in the Netherlands. Watch Pierre's ability to take an issue like that, where our food comes from, and make it a front and center issue that urban audiences can understand by talking about what it's going to do to affordability. What does the carbon tax do to that, et cetera? The second carbon tax from Trudeau. So I think you'll have the ability, because of the way he comes at these issues, to speak to multiple audiences in different parts of the country. That will be his success in the end. Secondly, I would say watch for him to continue speaking as directly as possible through his social media, through events, and being out in the public where people can have access to him and he can have direct access message-wise to communicate to people directly what his leadership would look like. So you'll see more of that to come as well.
I was not going to ask this question, but I'm going to now because, well, we have a few seconds left, and
pulling the pin on the grenade,
pulling the pin on the grenade, and throwing it out there. Well, now you've got me thinking two questions here, Jeff. So I'm going to pose the first one first, and then the next one. In this speech,
I'll let the others answer.
Yeah, in this speech tonight, Pierre Poilievre said he would cancel the carbon tax, plain and simple. We have seen 3 elections now where the carbon tax was front and center for the Liberal Party of Canada. Is this a winning strategy? Because haven't the Canadian voters been able to vote on this issue and say, we're okay with it because people voted? Yes, the majority of people, more people voted for the Conservative Party, but more seats went to the Liberals in the last 2 elections. But the Conservatives weren't able to galvanize it, and they came out and said, we want to cancel the carbon tax. And here we are, still with the carbon tax. And is it a dead issue, or is this the sort of the Hail Mary pass of Pierre Poilievre saying, okay, the other 2 weren't able to get it done, we will, and we will do it by my leadership and by canceling it on day 1 of Pierre government. Who wants to take this?
I will.
Right.
I think, times change and messages change, and what's important to people changes. And right now, as Pierre said, and many people have said, people are struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to make those mortgage payments, to heat their homes, to buy groceries. So when you hear the word tax, I don't care who you are, that's not helping. That's hurting. So I think that it's a very relevant topic once again. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people need to be able to afford to heat their homes. And if they're paying a carbon tax on that, they're not good with that. And as we know, it's not just your utilities that it affects, it's all down the chain. Everything becomes more expensive because to ship food to the grocery store is going to be more expensive. So I think it's relevant again, very relevant.
Sarah, Jeff, do you have anything to add on that before I ask my last question?
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say the context is different. I think that's where Rob is sort of aiming at over the last couple of times we've talked about a carbon tax. Look, when times are good and inflation is low and people's income exceeds their costs, maybe they worry less about the question of what the carbon tax is doing to their pocketbook. There's no luxury for that anymore. And I would say secondly, I think this forms a perfect contrast to Justin Trudeau, and maybe even subtly proves the point about it not being affordable to Canadians, because Trudeau is going to have to do the opposite. What's that? He's going to have to boost the carbon rebate back to people to deal with the affordability question. It's almost like proving Pierre's point that this thing is costing you more than you're actually really getting to deal with the cost of it. So I think politically it makes a lot of sense. It's a great contrast in approaches on how to deal with this, but the context for this issue has really changed. So I think relitigating it now is exactly the right time.
Yeah.
Sarah, what about yourself?
you know, we all know that the carbon tax doesn't work. It didn't slow anyone down. you know,
You're talking to the
you have,
guy who ran for the Liberals in 2015 on the platform of a carbon tax, and the moment it came out, and I said, "Well, I'm in Northern Alberta. I'm not gonna win."
sorry, dude. But like, and the fact that we need to put a carbon tax on the carbon tax, it just shows how, ineffective it is. I think we can have more creative ways of trying to, reach a certain, I was conservative. I was part of Conservatives for Clean Growth. We're a little green, and, we want to make sure that there's a good environmental platform because, Canadians are looking into it. It's not everybody's like, no, climate change is, no, it is a thing. Like, I'm going to sound like a bad person right now, but climate change is a thing. And either
You say it, Sarah, I won't.
Okay. So, but I think what's going to be super important is, again, reframing the message. Stop saying the carbon tax. Let's talk about affordability, saying, the government is making it more difficult for you to afford those things because of their policies. Scrap the word carbon tax. Everybody's tired of hearing of it. Reframe it in a way that the current Liberals are, intervening into the cost of, driving, food transportation, food itself, hitting your home. They need to really reframe their message in order to make it more reasoning with more people, because what's going to happen right now for the Conservative, it's all about expanding your base. So the more reasonable you're going to sound, the less a broken record you're going to sound on the carbon tax, and find creative ways to call it and bring other ideas on the table and make people think differently. I mean, like, look, this is what the Trudeau policies are doing. How about we're doing this, but we're going to be, big emitters, or, try to find different solutions. And I honestly think they should stop talking about the carbon tax and go full on affordability and hide it into their messaging. I think they're going to be extremely popular with that. And that's just me.
My last question, because Jeff sparked another question in my head in the last segment, so I'm going to ask this last question, and that is about leadership. Andrew Scheer chose to stay on after resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. Erin O'Toole is still an MP. Candice Bergen, the interim leader, has decided to call it quits. She is leaving the party. She's not calling it quits. She's retiring from elected office after being there for some time. Erin O'Toole, and I just harken back because he is the last elected leader of this party. Does he have a role to play in this caucus with Pierre Poilievre as leader? And I could be looking into this way too much, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I saw something that wasn't there. But there was a lot of talk tonight about listening to your caucus, listening to your voters, listening to your base, letting that internal conflict happen. Candace said it a few times throughout her speech that to the next leader, please just listen to your caucus. Does Erin O'Toole have a place in this caucus with Pierre Poilievre as leader? And that's the last question. I know it's a really odd question to end on, but I know Erin. I was the first journalist to interview him when he announced he was running for the by-election in Durham from the Orno Weekly Times. So it's not like him and I don't go back. It's just, I think he's a good guy. I did not support him in the last leadership in the election, but I think he could be useful for the party going forward, maybe in foreign affairs or something else. But does he have a role? Does anyone want to take that? Wow.
I'll go first.
Crickets. Okay, Rob,
just
go for it.
crickets. Yeah. I think he has a role just as any other MP has a role. I don't think that he should be given any sort of special treatment or anything. I think that, I mean, maybe this is just speaking for myself, but I think Conservatives are quite disappointed with the results of the election when it was Erin O'Toole. And I think we need to move on from that. We need to have a new face, and let's leave that in the past. It unfortunately did not work. I think Erin O'Toole's probably a great guy, and obviously he does really great work, but it didn't lead to a win. So Yeah, I agree. You have to listen to your caucus and everything. That's important. Very important.
There's a lot of mother-in-laws in the caucus right now, and Pierre's gonna have to deal with all of them.
Yes.
What does that
It's
mean?
gonna be, when you listen to your mother-in-law because you're trying to do something, but they're like, no, 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 you should do it like that. But
I like that.
at the end of the day, they're being elected under a certain banner, and as long as they keep being elected, if they want to still represent, and if they still win their riding, of course they should have a place in caucus, right? If they win their nomination fair and square, why would you prevent your mother-in-law from coming at Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving? Like, this is democracy, right? And we need to respect the very desire of the base are nominating and electing those MPs. So as a leader, you need to be mindful of that. So yeah, he's gonna have to work with them if they want to remain in caucus or not. It's their personal decision, but Andrew did it, and Andrew is now a backbencher, and Andrew's just doing just fine. So we'll see what's gonna happen.
Jeff, we'll throw it over to you for the last comment
I'm
here. You don't have to
so
answer if you
glad
don't
that
want
you
to.
pulled the pin and threw a grenade into the room. So let me just answer. I think that Conservative members will definitely be looking forward to an announcement by Jason Kenney that he'll be resigning with the next leader. Oh, wrong question.
I was like, wait a minute.
Did I miss something? Is he going back into federal politics, Jeff?
You had my brain running here for a second. I was like, did I miss a memo?
Good night, all.
There you go. With that, I want to thank Jeff, Sarah, and Rob for sitting down with us for the last hour. It has been a great conversation. There's lots to unpack. That we're going to see the new formation of the Pierre Conservatives or the Polyev Conservatives. We had the Harper Conservatives, and now we have the Polyev Conservatives. And there are still things that I still don't know about this man. I did not know he was adopted. This was news to me. He mentioned his father and his adopted father and his partner. He talked about his mother and his birth mother were all in attendance tonight. This is a new Conservative Party. This is a new movement in Canada that we saw unfold tonight, with 68% of the points. I should say the points, 68% of the points that were allocated tonight went to Pierre. So with that, Sarah, Jeff, Rob, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, as I say at the end of all my interviews, but before I should say that, because I'm getting the evil glare from Rob right now, if you're watching this or listening to this, hit that subscribe button. Get notified by clicking on that bell button as well. So that way you can be informed of all the times that we go live. And we're going to be going live a lot over the next few weeks because we have the Green Party of Canada candidates coming in. We have the Green Party leadership. We have the United Conservative Party leadership. And we have a few by-elections that are going to be happening in Alberta. So we're going to be covering it from wall to wall. You will be sick of my face, just like my husband is half the time. So with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Get out from behind social media for at least 5 minutes a day and go have a conversation with somebody. As you see, it can actually make our democracy better when we talk to each other, and it makes our society better, and it makes us better as a people. So with that, have yourself an excellent day. And remember, everyone, keep talking.